Senator from Connecticut.
Thanks, Mr. President. The Trump administration is making history today, but not in a good way. In fact, in a reprehensible and irresponsible way. In one sentence, for the first time in history in the United States of America, SNAP benefits have been stopped. There are disasters and catastrophes that occur in the United States, just as in any other part of the world, whether it's Katrina or Storm Sandy or the Hurricane Melissa that we just had in Jamaica abroad. There are natural disasters that are beyond our control. Rarely does humanity choose inhumanity. That's a choice that, fortunately, mankind tries to spare. But today, Donald Trump is stopping SNAP benefits for millions of Americans across the country. In fact, 1/8 of all Americans depend on SNAP benefits. 1 of every 10 people in Connecticut receives SNAP benefits. In New Mexico, the proportion is even higher, about 1 out of 5. This stopping of SNAP benefits is a natural, or I should say national disaster that is not a natural disaster. It is man-made, purposeful, and intentional. And its purpose is really just to inflict pain. It is the result of an effort by the Trump administration to inflict maximum pain, to magnify political pressure. Kids are pawns in this political game for Donald Trump. Millions of Americans depend on this program, including 360,000 people in Connecticut. Republicans are saying it is the inevitable consequence of a government shutdown. False. There is money, the Emergency Contingency Fund, and revenues from other sources like tariffs that are more than adequate to fund the $8 to $9 billion for this program in November. There is an emergency contingency fund that exists for this purpose, an emergency, at least $5 billion, perhaps as much as $6 billion, and more than adequate resources from other accounts that can be used. In fact, the Department of Agriculture has used those other accounts in situations like this one, in shutdowns where administrations have said, we're going to feed the hungry. We're not letting Americans starve. I've been to the food pantries and the shelters and the soup kitchens around Connecticut, and what I've heard and I've seen is lines of people who are going to be going hungry when the private contributions of food are exhausted, and soon they will be. That's what I'm hearing from the folks who run Connecticut Food Share, the St. Vincent de Paul Pantry in Middletown, all across Connecticut, in towns as well as cities. We face a food insecurity crisis. The term food insecurity is a brilliant euphemism for hunger. And the gnawing effect of hunger, we all know it, prevents kids from learning or playing sports. It is debilitating, not just in the short run, it affects people in the long run, nutritionally. So this idea of make America healthy again is really the height of hypocrisy for an administration that is making Americans hungry again. And Donald Trump just days ago said, and I'm quoting almost exactly, said he would be honored to obey a court order that provided direction. Well, there is direction. 2 courts have ordered it, and now he's defying those courts. He's reversed himself in just a matter of days, and now he's saying that he refuses to provide the funding for SNAP benefits. These court orders are not suggestions or invitations. They are mandatory directives. 2 courts, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, in lawsuits brought by state attorneys general in Massachusetts and by cities, towns, and private organizations in Rhode Island. We've been clear again and again and again as Democrats. Americans should never have to choose between food and health, between food and rent, between food and mortgage payments, between food and electricity. There should be no need for families to choose because there should be no choice by our public officials to make them choose. But that's what we're seeing right now. And if we can be sure of one thing here, kids will go to bed hungry. Because I've talked to their moms and dads. Kids will go to bed hungry, or they will be unable to go to a doctor because Republicans say, well, reopen the government, and then we'll talk about health care insurance coverage. We should be talking about it right now because families are making decisions about whether they can afford health insurance right now on the open markets that are ongoing right now. And they can't afford to get sick on Donald Trump's timetable. Nobody can. As of Saturday, the regularly appropriated funding for SNAP ended, which left families across the country wondering how they're going to put food on the table. And that was when the courts stepped in to this crisis. And state the obvious, there's no reason for anyone to go hungry, not just because the courts have ordered that SNAP benefits be provided, but because there is a moral imperative in America. Starvation occurred systematically and ruthlessly as a result of Stalin saying about Ukraine that he was going to take their harvest, kill their livestock, uproot their gardens in backyards. He starved millions of people. It was the result of a totalitarian edict. Now, I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Stalin, but starvation is not some abstract concept. It is real. And there is a legal obligation in America as well as a moral obligation to provide this program. We do not live in Stalin's Soviet Union. But we do live in a country that is threatened with the specter of totalitarianism because these kinds of decisions involve defying courts. Donald Trump is defying courts. He is defying laws passed by the Congress, signed by the president, that provide a legal obligation to use that available money. This march toward totalitarianism is not theoretical or abstract. And again, I am not drawing any comparison, none, with Stalinist Soviet Union. But hunger should not be something that we regard as a realistic threat in America. It may exist in other parts of the world. We try to provide food to those parts of the world where kids are in danger of going hungry. And we ought to do at least the same here for the children of this country. Democrats have been clear that we will come to the table, negotiate, reach a solution. It could be done this afternoon. If Speaker Johnson would bring the House back to town from its paid vacation, if Donald Trump would show leadership and seek a solution, and Speaker Thune be part of that constructive process. It is not an inevitable consequence that SNAP be shut down. It is a choice. It is a failure. It is a purposeful and conscious failure. And the United States Department of Agriculture has a moral and a legal obligation to use the vast produce and output of our agricultural system so that we in America can sleep at night with a clear conscience, knowing our country puts feeding hungry children above politics and refuses to use them as pawns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I yield the floor.